Hello all, welcome to the next lecture for Classical Encryption Techniques. In this lecture, we will be studying what are the basic requirements for the encryption. Before that, we will be studying what basically the encryption is. What was the traditional approach for encryption and why there was a need of the encryption? So before going into the modern cryptographic concepts, first we will be learning about what the basic concept of encryption technique is, why the encryption technique was introduced into the picture. So let's begin with classical encryption techniques. As opposed to modern cryptography, means as a different way or as a different method as compared to the modern cryptography. The goals of encryption techniques, the goals of classical encryption techniques, here we can see there are two goals. First one is to introduce the basic concepts and the terminology of encryption. Second is to prepare the study for modern cryptography. First, we need to learn what is the meaning of encryption. First, there was a need to learn about the basic concepts of encryption. The normal public were unaware about this concept of encryption, and therefore it was the need of an hour to introduce the basic concepts of encryption, to introduce the terminology of encryption, to make world aware about the terminology of encryption, to make the world aware about small different things which are included in the concepts of the encryption. And the second goal was to prepare the study for modern cryptography. So with the basic concepts of the classical encryption technique only, then the concept of the modern cryptography came into existence. These are some basic terminologies which were introduced to introduce the concept of the encryption. First, the plain text. The plain text is nothing but the original message which a user wants to transmit over the network via the communication link to a destination. Ciphertext is then considered as the coded message. Now this coded message is different than the plain text message. This coding has been done by using the concept of the encryption. Next is a cipher or a cryptographic system. Now how the ciphertext is developed? For developing this ciphertext, there is the need of an algorithm for which it will help the user to convert your plain text into the ciphertext. So the cipher here can be considered as the algorithm for transforming plain text to the ciphertext, and ciphertext is the coded message. Now, for doing this coding of the message for the plain text, we do require a key, and that key information is used in the cipher, and that key is only known to the sender and the receiver. Encipher is the next term, which is nothing but encrypt, converting the plain text to ciphertext. Now the process of converting the plain text into ciphertext is called as encryption. And the next is decipher, that is converting of then the ciphertext to plain text is known as the decipherment of the message. That is nothing but the decryption of a message. So when we convert the plain text into the ciphertext, that process is known as encryption, which generally takes place at the sender's end, which the sender uses for sending of the message, and the decipher takes place at the receiver's end when the receiver receives the encrypted message from the sender, and when the receiver wants to read the message, receiver has to decipher the message. That is, receiver has to decrypt the message with a key which is being shared between sender and the receiver. Now the next term is cryptography. Cryptography is termed as the study of encryption principles and the methods. The complete study of encrypting algorithms, what are the different methods, what are the different principles are being used for the process of encryption, that complete study is known as the cryptography. Cryptanalysis is the next terminology, which is also known as code breaking. Here, we can consider this as the study of principles or the methods of deciphering the ciphertext without knowing the key. That means this can be considered as a type of the attack also, cryptanalysis type of the attack, wherein without knowing the key, the decipherment of the message can take place. That is conversion of the ciphertext into the plain text. Next is the cryptology, field of both cryptography and cryptanalysis. The complete study of cryptography and the cryptanalysis can be accumulated into one terminology of cryptology. Now the symmetric encryption. Basically, classical encryption techniques has three different subparts. We can say the first one is the symmetric cipher model, wherein we have to study about what the cryptography is, what the cryptanalysis is, and what the brute force type of the attack is. Then comes the substitution techniques. Under the substitution techniques, we have to learn different techniques for doing the encryption of the plain text to ciphertext. Those techniques are Caesar cipher, monoalphabetic cipher, Playfair, Hill, polyalphabetic cipher, one-time pad. All these things we will be seeing in the later lectures. And the third one is the transposition techniques. So out of that, first we'll be seeing what is the symmetric encryption. Symmetric encryption can be considered as a conventional type of an encryption which takes place with the help of a private key. And here for this type of the symmetric encryption, we use only one key. We use only single key. That means the sender and the receiver both uses the single key for the encryption and the decryption purpose. Sender and recipient share a common key, and that common key is only being used at both the ends for the encryption and the decryption purpose. That means all classical encryption algorithms will be using that same shared common key, and that is the private key. Was only type prior to invention of the public key in the 1970s. Generally, in encryption methodologies and encryption algorithms, private key and the public keys are used. Nowadays, both of them are being used because public key is the key which is being shared among the sender and the receiver, and the private key is the key which is kept with the individual itself, which is kept with the either of the sender or with the receiver itself. Generally, encryption takes place with the help of the public key and decryption takes place with the help of the private key in today's scenario. But before the invention of the public key, there was the only one key which is known as the private key, which is also considered as a shared key amongst the sender and the receiver, and that was the only key which was used by both the sender and the receiver for encryption and decryption purpose, and by far most widely used. These are some of the requirements for the symmetric encryption. we are in need of a strong encryption algorithm which should use a secret key which is only known to the sender and the receiver. Here we can compute the mathematical format of the symmetric encryption. We can see that y is equals to e of x, x is d of y, x here is considered as the plain text, y is considered as the ciphertext, and here key is the shared common key in between the sender and the receiver. E stands for the encryption algorithm, D stands for the decryption algorithm. Obviously, E and D are known to the public. Here we have to assume any encryption algorithm which is known by the sender and the receiver both, which implies a secure channel to distribute the key. It is very much essential that distribution of the key should be through the secured communication channel, so that whatever the key is being shared in between the sender and the receiver shouldn't be taken by the intruders or shouldn't be taken by any of the attacker. So these are the basic requirements for any encryption technique. This is the model of the conventional crypto system, wherein we can see that the sender is sending the plain text message, that is X, which after performing the encryption algorithm gets converted into the Y. Y is the encrypted message. Encryption is being taking place with the help of a key source, and after the encryption takes place, that key is being shared with the receiver through a secure channel, and then at the receiver's end, the receiver will then be using the same key for decrypting the message which is being received at the receiver's end from the sender. So the ciphertext will get converted into the plain text at the receiver's end. For this, there is the crypt analyst. We can say that crypt analyst is nothing but one methodology which is being used for proper transmission of the ciphertext from sender to the receiver. Hope you might have got this concept of classical encryption technique. Thank you.